Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at several character techniques here for modelling. We're going to start with some basic modelling of an arm. And I'm just going to go in here, instead of bringing rotoscope views in, I'm going to show you another technique. I'm going to use some Polygon mesh grid. I'm going to give it no subdivisions because we don't need any. And we're going to apply a simple texture to it by going here, material, we'll use material manager, and we'll create two constant materials, 1, 2, and then we'll just apply these apply them to two grids. So we'll take this one here, and then we'll duplicate that to make another one, and we're just going to rotate these here. So we'll rotate this one by 90 degree in the X, and this one by 90 degree in the Z, to get two different planes here. And then we'll just take these materials, constant 1, we can apply that. It's easy to do this in shaded mode because you can just drag and drop. Okay, we'll double click on this one and we'll give this one an image, and the image we're going to use, image from file, and we go to our training course files project, and I have these two arms, so we'll just give this one, I'm not sure if I got the right ones here. Do that one on front. Just going to change this here to shaded textured, and that was the wrong one, so I'm just going to change that. New from file. This will be arm side, and then we need to. I guess it may have been the right one. We'll find that in a second. And we need to give it UVs as well, so once applied it should actually show the texture projection that's on it. If it doesn't, then just make sure it is applied. So this is the arm side, so we're just going to go here, textured, and we'll just drag and drop that there, and then we'll just double click on it again and see if it's updated here. So yeah, so we can now create a new. This will be planar. You can kind of see in the window this would be YZ. So new planar. Actually, it will be XZ because they were rotated, and we may need to flip those in a second, but we'll take care of that. Then we'll do the other one here. This one we'll make sure it's applied to that one. Double click on it. New image. This has already been loaded in, so if we go from source, we should see arm front in there. Because and then again, new XZ, because again it was rotated up from the plane. We can get a texture or a texture decal. Now we can see right now the image itself is very stretched, so we actually need to adjust the polygon to make these look correct. First of all, this one here needs to be rotated, so we can pick that and rotate the Y by -90. And then normally what to do is actually go in, possibly freeze all the effects, but now we want to make sure everything's the right size. Both of the images have been sized, and we can see here the actual size of them. This is 518 by 1670. So if we go in adjusters, we can go scale and Y, so 5.8. Let's do it here. 5.8, 16.7. So that's not quite what we want, so we're just going to change that. 16.7, 5.8. Let's see. Guess that was the wrong proportions. So we'll have 5.8, 16.7. If I can type 16.7, there we go. And same with this one here. Pick that one. 5.8, 16.7. And by scaling those up, we've got the same proportions we had on the original image. Now we can use these to model the actual arm. So I want to get sure everything is lined up through the center line as close as possible, and then we'll just create a couple of simple curves. So we're going to create 4 curves to build this up. Curved. We're going to use actually one curve and duplicate it. We've got symmetry turned on there, we don't want. So we'll just go here. So we'll start at the top. So from here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you've got detail where you need it. 5, 6, 7, 8. So about 8 to 10 points to define this. And then take that curve. It may be hard to see in texture decal. I'm just going to texture it. You can see the curve. Duplicate it. And I got the object as well. Give that a second. Just the curve. If you have more picking just the curve, just make sure it's on curve mode. Duplicate it, and we'll move it across, and then we'll start moving the points to redefine this. Yeah, I'm going to use the move point tool by itself, so I don't have to worry about tangents at this time. The idea is to move the points to make sure that when you put this together, it stays in a pretty nice shape. Okay, we'll take this curve here, duplicate that one. This time I'm actually going to rotate it by 90 degrees. Again, we just make this just textured so you can see the curve. If it's too dark, this is because the object is inversed, so we can actually pick the object. Oops, go back to object mode, and polymesh, invert polygon. Sorry about that. So I'll just go here and resume, make some more of these. Again, I'll just use the move tool. And the idea is we're just trying to get the rough shape in here. Okay, get those arm detail in there. That's good. And then we'll just duplicate this once more. You could use symmetry, but I find it's easier just to move the points. And the idea is just to kind of get elbow in there. I'm just going to move some points here to try to get some more detail right there. It's just another technique you can use to model, instead of using reference in an image plane. Sometimes it's nice to use an actual texture plane, actually texture an object to build. Just turn this shaded, and now you see we've got the 4 curves. We can put those curves in order. I'm just going to turn off these planes, or hide them for a moment, and just look at the 4 curves, and just use those curves to build the geometry. So I'm going to put them in order. 1, so important you put them in order. 2, 3, 4, and we use polymesh loft. At the moment it's kind of low res. We can close this. If I attempt to close either the U, that's not what we want, or the V, we can give it a few more subdivisions to get a bit more detail, and you can change how it subdivides as well if you want to. And then you get roughly some base shape. Of course it does need some tweaking here, especially there in the middle you can see, but you can definitely use this as a starting point to build geometry. Again, you can move the curves and the points on the curves around. Just going to move this curve back a little bit just to give it a bit more shape here. And then of course it's just a matter of tweaking points, moving geometry, and editing until you get what you want. In this case this curve is a bit short, so we can take this entire curve going to pick it as an edge loop and just move the entire edge loop until I get it spaced a better way, and maybe move that point in here a bit more. So definitely one way to go in and create an object and get some nice structure to it. If you want to, you can turn your headlights on to get a better view. I always think it's best when you're using this to go to display options, turn headlights and specular on as well, because you want to look at the specular highlights because they can really outline issues in the shapes. Did that turn on? And if you are finding things, when you see those speculars, you can really tell where you need to work or where you don't need to work. So that's just another technique to model an object. So that's one thing I want to talk about. The next one I want to talk about in character modeling is some of the stuff with working with high-res objects. And then of course we're going later on to some of the polygon reduction and edge loops and relax tools. Because really most modeling now is working with high-res objects. Ahead and talk about some more character modeling techniques, and we can see here my list of things to cover. So we've just looked at the basic character modeling and more of the arm. I want to talk about deformers and some of the other tools you can use to work with more high-res polygon objects, and then finally we'll look at some shapes as well. So there is a primitive here under models called the face man or woman, and this actually uses what's a series of deformers and weight maps. And you can see here, let me just frame the head here, let me go to shaded, and we can clearly see here that there's a head, there's a little locator here, and maybe it's not it, but there's this thing called face maker, and there's a series of sliders you can adjust to change the size, roundness. You know, we can change the cheekbones, jaw shape, and lots of different things. And it's a fairly basic setup. What we have here is a series of deformers, and we're going to just create a little body maker, just very simple, using the same concept. So let me just get a new scene. Actually, we'll open up one of my models, and I have a model here that's kind of based on a default character. It's got a bit of modeling in, but it's done with ZBrush a while ago, but it's just some topology of a guy here. I just stuck some feet on as well, feet. So here's a little guy character, and we decided we want to make him go fat and thin. So the way that face maker worked, let me just show you that once more. Okay, face is down there, little face. The way that works is if you look at the actual geometry, if we go into here and look at how it's set up, it has a series of sorry, there's the wrong one. Face. It has a series of these operations. It's got like 39 taper ops, and you can see each of these taper ops deal with something else. If I open one of those taper ops, they all deal with different things. Like this is probably the cheeks, and those actually tied in with an expression to our little window in the face maker window, and that was created with a custom property window, and here it is, and that was cheeks fat. So eyes, nose, mouth. So there we are, the cheek fat. So that was that slider there, and we saw it here under the taper that was using the cheek fat here. So, and the way it controls just the cheeks, not the whole head, is they have weight maps on. So if you hit W, you can see different weight maps, and here is our cheek weight map, and we can see each of these weight maps are either stored tied to the taper, but they're also stored under clusters. So under clusters you can see each of these weight maps: lower lip weight map, chin shape weight map, neck muscle weight map. So these are weight maps, and each of those are tied to a different one of these, either push or taper ops, that will push geometry out, push things out based on the normals, and taper is a similar kind of tapers things in out as well, gives some curvature as well. So you can apply these however you want to a character. Let me just show you how these deformers work on something simple. Delete that. So if I actually had a primitive cube and I subdivide it a bunch of times, okay, we're just going to still our characters in there. We're going to use them in a second. So just X scale up a bit. Okay, and then we will try different deform. So under here we've got deform. You can see how this is. So a taper will taper in and out, and there's a amplitude that kind of defines how it tapers. There's also, you can tell which axis it tapers on. So you can do a single axis taper, dual axis taper, however you want. The axis it tapers on, we're now tapering on the Y axis, and you can see the amount it tapers, and that's just a taper op. If you want to get rid of that, you can see here on the cube is our taper op, and we can just pick that and delete it to get rid of it in the history or the Explorer. If we do a push op, sorry, deform push, a push will push out based on the normals. But say you want to push the whole thing and you want to push an area, that's when weight maps come in, and you can just go in and paint a weight map. The easiest way to create a weight map is you do a property weight map, so it's under property, and under here weight map, and then you can go in and W, there's a weight painter, and you can go in and paint it. You can also set a constant value, or you can set some of these predefined, like linear, different predefined ones, radial. You can do a radial and you can inverse it, lots of things like that. Or you can just go in, or I normally do is leave it off and just paint an area you want. Left mouse will paint. If you hold shift, left mouse will paint, control will smooth out, shift will erase. Also left mouse will paint, right mouse button will erase as well. Often I would paint an area, hold control, kind of smooth it out a bit to get the area I want, the weight map. So we've got this little ball here. If we go back to the push op, right now it still does the whole object, but you can click on this little connection icon and connect it to your weight map that's located under cluster weight map. You can name the weight maps, you can give them different colors. The weight map operator allows you to do that, so if you want to, now you'll see it's only pushing out where the weight map was painted. what we'll just do here is we'll paint the weight map. So we go property, weight map. This will create the weight map, and then we can go in and paint this where you want. And weight map is like pretty much a cluster in other software packages with weights on. So instead of simple cluster and making cluster weights like you would in Maya, you can just paint these weight maps. So again, we can paint the area we want. So it's going to be here's kind of stomach here, maybe up a little higher. We're just going to remove some of that there, and then down on his sides as well. It's kind of like this belt of fat. Okay, and we'll have it kind of blowing out here, and a little bit on the other side here, and then just kind of make the brush a bit bigger. Middle mouse will decide the brush size. Gain control will allow you to soften the effect, because you don't want to have a hard edge on this. Really want to smooth it out on the sides here, so it does kind of more on the front than the back. Okay, so that should be good. Let's hook it up and see how it looks. So we can use the back here to go back to our previous property window and then connect it up, or you can go and find it in the Explorer. Connect, polymesh, cluster, weight map, weight map. Now it'd be good if this had a different name. Right now that's connected, and you can see that as you decrease and increase that, it's just affecting this one area. Realize that actually he's more pregnant now than anything, so I want to actually decrease the weight in the top here. So I just use the brush and just hold shift or right mouse button, just kind of decrease some of the weight down there and increase it down the bottom here, so we just give a bit more weight down there, and then we'll smooth them out because you want a nice smooth transition. And you can see again roughly how that works. So there we are. There's the fat controller for our little guy, and we can increase and decrease it, and you can see as you increase it he gets a little chubby around the stomach. If you actually wanted to kind of tone out some of these, you could even paint less weight in some areas to kind of tone out some areas where you want to increase the weight. So I could even go here, wrong mouse button, and decrease the weight a bit in those areas here, just to try to keep it more consistent when the weight map's off. So I've actually done some weight to kind of blend out some area. But you can keep making as many of these you want. Ideally you would name all of them. So you can see here right now under the cluster that one's not named. You can go in here, F2, and name that weight map belly fat, and then you've got your belly fat weight map. And I would actually, you can also name this part as well. So you can know what's what, because it's good to actually go in and name these well. So that's basic weight mapping and basic deformers, and we can definitely do a lot of nice advanced effects with these and create them. Most of this would be for pre-render, but there may be ways to get this into a game engine or into a different pipeline if you want to, and it could also be baked out as a shape if you need to. There are options to kind of plot out shapes in the animation module. So you can animate and then plot out the shapes as well. So let's go ahead and show another technique you can use to. So I use deformers a lot with weight maps as modeling tools, and they can also be used in animation tools as well. But they're nice. They can also be used to prototype, create a character, or character character creation style tools. If you want to make several different generic characters, you could build your own character builder tool using a series of weight maps if you want. So I'm going to go again in new scene, and we're going to talk about another technique, and this technique is known as resurfacing. And often we deal with scan data, so you may have a high-res scan data. So I'm going to open up a scene here. So here is our friend, and it's a fairly dirty mesh. You can see I'm in hidden line here, but we can see that it's not a mesh I would ever use for going in and animating or sculpting or texture mapping. It's just going to be a nightmare. It's also, if we go to the eyeball visibility options and down to stats and turn on the frame, you'll see this is for 500,000 polygons, so it's also pretty heavy. So first thing I'll do if I want to resurface it, I want to actually put this on nice geometry. So I go in and use one of our tools here to get it a more manageable, even though XSI can manage this many polygons. With my resurfacing technique I actually make it low res, because I only need the shape, and then I'd use a high res one, this one, to generate maps like normal maps or occlusion maps later on, or displacement maps as well. So we can go here, poly mesh and polygon reduction. It's a great poly reduction tool. It's not super fast, but it has a lot of advanced techniques in it that really can help you out with your poly reduction and really help you build good LODs using this tool, and we'll talk about the tool later on. So what it'll do is it initially reduce it by 50%, and then I can reduce it by more if I need to. And I'll just talk away while that's whirring away for a few minutes. And again, with an object that's 500,000 polygons, it takes longer, of course, to work. With a smaller object, it takes less time. It should be almost done. The machine's making funny noises. And again, this is something that takes, depending on how fast your machine is and how big the model is, but sometimes up to a couple of minutes. There it goes. So it wasn't too bad, and that was about maybe a minute. It just seems like forever when you're making a video. And you can increase this number to reduce it more, and I'm going to reduce this by about 97%. Again, when you can see the polygon went down to 250,000. It gets faster the more you reduce, and now it's going to be much faster because it's already half the polygons. It keeps track of the old polygons, so it knows how far it's gone, but it will be faster. You see that was much faster this time, and now we're down to just 14,000 polygons. It's still heavy, but this definitely gives me enough shape to do the next step. So what we'll do is actually bring in a good topology model. So I actually have another one here, and we're going to, instead of opening it, we're going to merge it. So file merge allows me to open up another file into the existing file, and we'll open up our head medium res. And here's our medium res head. It's up there in the middle of the sky. I'm going to move it down, and when the pivot is in the wrong place, so I'll just do transform, move center to vertices, and then we can move that down. Just going to move it down to 0, 0, 0, and scale it up so we can actually see it. So there's our geometry we can actually use, and this is some nice kind of decent geometry we could definitely use as a base mesh. It's got nice edge loops and pretty well modeled for a character. The idea is we're going to use a tool called shrink wrap, and we're going to make this geometry here fit on this head here. So the first step is going to go in and use a lattice to kind of make this fit. So I'm going to go to a side view, and we'll just use a couple of side views and go wireframe. Start by scaling it roughly as close as I can, getting main features lined up, and the most important features line up are the eyes, mouth and nose. So we'll start with, we'll just move it up a bit, and we'll see we need to scale it down a bit because this guy's a little shorter, fatter face, and we'll get it roughly lined up, and let's get a touch bigger, and that's pretty good right now. Once we got to this stage, and we'll just make sure it's roughly aligned in the other windows, so here you can probably scale it down a touch here. Once at this stage, then we're going to go in and apply a lattice to it. And there's another Deformers hybrid. This one, instead of going from deform by lattice, you actually go primitive lattice, because this will create the lattice and apply it to the selected geometry in a single go. So get primitive lattice, so put a lattice around this, and I just use the lattice as I would existing points to go in and model this to fit around the head. So we'll just tag some points here, and we'll just start tweaking those points, getting this to fit as best I can. And I normally just start making kind of the gross changes first, and then I'll start going in later on and making more of the fine changes as I need to. The lips there, chin's always a fun area because he's got a double chin, this guy hasn't, so just start working with that. And you just go in here and start tweaking this until you get roughly to fit. And once you get one view in, then you're going to start working on another view, side views, and then you'll start orbiting round and looking exactly what you have. So we're just go a little bit, then open up a scene where I already have latticed up. So you can see here I've got the ear, of course. I want to make sure the ear is lined up pretty much correctly, and of course the ear is bigger on this guy, so just going to scale that down a bit by moving some points around. And there's lots of kind of tweaking around. I'm working on both sides, going through the middle here, so it makes my life a little bit easier. And we'll just kind of go around here, look at the front view. One thing you often get is the neck doesn't go through, so you can see just going to go to hidden line, and you should see the other geometry kind of intersect through where it didn't quite match. You can see here I need to pull out the neck a bit, the back of the head a bit, and work the ears maybe a touch more. So in that case you'll just be picking more geometry and just moving stuff as you need to using the lattice. And I'm just using T, tagging points and just moving them out to get the areas I need. Back of the head. Okay, so we'll open up the other scene. You get the idea how you do that. And here's a scene that I did earlier, and it's just pretty much the same thing. I just lattice. Once you finish with a lattice, if you have a lattice on the object, just put lattice back on here. All you do is pick the geometry, hit freeze, and then you can delete the lattice. So, and this should be pretty good. You can check in the here, but there are no lattices still applied to the geometry because I've deleted it, of course. We've got this one, of course. If you look at wireframe, you'll see the high-res head is kind of encompassed within that, and it should fit fairly well. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but it's a fairly good fit. Eyes are pretty important. We could tweak this more, but we can tweak it after the fact. So now what we're going to do is a shrink wrap, and this is a great tool I use many times for lots of different purposes. And in this case, we're going to pick the good topology head, deform, shrink wrap, and then pick the other head. I just pick it inside here, and then right mouse button. And what happens is it will just suck it onto the other one. There's different options for a shrink wrap. In this case, what I'm going to do is pick the high-res head, just hide it, H, and we can see roughly what we have here. If I go back to my shrink wrap window and just lock it, you can see different options. You have bidirectional, that allows you to shrink both directions, is always good. You can do towards center, parallel to axis is another one. Closest vertex, closest surface, closest surface smoothed. Towards inner object in this case would work quite well, and you can see it's pretty good apart from some issues with the eyes and of course ears as well. but we can sort that out in a second. You can also increase or decrease the amount of shrink wrapping it has and kind of put it back off the object, or kind of suck it in more to the object. Of course, the default value is 1. 0 is no shrink wrap, 1 is being shrink wrapped. You can see it's already starting to get the shape of the head. If we mute it, that's where we were before, there's a shrink wrap. Okay, let's close this down, and then we can start working with this. And one of the great ways of seeing how shrink wrap works, just move the geometry up and down. You can see how it's kind of shrunk wrap over the surface. Let's just go side view, and you can see using a slightly lower resolution as well meant that I could clearly move this around, and I could see how the shrink wrap was working. Of course, there are areas that aren't working, so I want to start shifting geometry around to make it fit. Imagine this is like a sock or a stretchy material on the surface. I need to start working with it. So one of the great things you can do is reorder the construction node. So what you have here, when you go to Explorer and we actually look at this head, you'll see on the polygon we have the shrink wrap right now under modeling. So if we do any modeling operations, it's going to be happen after the shrink wrap. So if I start moving points around, if I drag, and you can see that right now, if I move a point, you can see the point just moves freely. But if I actually reorder this and drag that shrink wrap under animation and then go and move a point, the point now is moving on the surface. It's actually shrink wrapping as I move the point. This is really useful, especially when you go to proportional, and we're going to start tweaking stuff and seeing what we get here. So first of all, let's just go with these eyes and try and get that to fit a little better, because this area here is kind of ugly, so I just pick those here. If I move them down a bit, you can actually, we may even get rid of those ones, because it's probably, this is kind of the inside of the eye, so I'm just going to, you can delete those and that will just work a lot better. Same here, I'm just going to do an edge or face loop, that's Alt, middle mouse, and that'll just make it easier for those to match in here. But you'll see now if I start using the move tool, I'm going to turn proportional on, proportional is turned on, and we can actually make the radius bigger. So we're just holding R down to make the proportional radius bigger, and if I want to I could turn the symmetry on as well, and then when it works on one, it should work on the other side as well. But at the moment it's only working on single points with symmetry, so I just turn symmetry off. You can always symmetrize later on, especially because this head's not fully symmetrical, and you can see how I'm moving things around to get it to, and it's shrink wrapping as I move the stuff around. So it's a great to see. Again, we do the mouth. If you're not quite on the mouth here, as we move it around, you can kind of see how stuff is stretching over and rolling around the surface. Into what the ears definitely need work. We can start moving those, and you can see kind of how the ears are mapping in there quite effectively. And that's really what you do, is you just go in here and tweak this until nose, is a little bit strained under there. So again, you can see as I move things around, it's trying to rework some of this. I need to make that radius smaller, so I'm not going too crazy here. But we're getting this resurfaced and rebuilt in very effective and very quick and easily. But sometimes you have some things that won't work perfectly straight off, and you will have to do some manual tweaking, but you can get a lot of the results very quickly. And you can even model in to the shrink wrap. So you say, oh, I need more detail under the nose because it's not enough. We can start going in, because the shrink wrap's after modeling, we can add more edge loops and things in, and then you can see as you add more detail in, it is conforming, let's do his chin here, to the shrink wrap. So it's very exciting that you can add more detail and it will build into it and still conform to that shrink wrap. You can also use weight map of a shrink wrap, and you can paint areas where you don't want the shrink wrap to affect as well. So you can do that and relink it into the shrink wrap. And just like ears, for instance, sometimes we'll take the ears and we'll paint them away from the shrink wrap so the ears aren't deformed by the shrink wrap. So that's pretty much resurfacing using shrink wrap. It's a great tool, and I've used this many times to do some really effective techniques. So next we're going to talk about the polygon reduction tool in a bit more detail, because we only kind of breezed over it before, and I'm going to show you that and how that works. So we have our new head, and maybe the ears aren't perfect, so we won't worry about those right now. But you can also do a relax. Another deformer I'll go to before I finish up this is a relax deformer, and you can see again this will kind of relax the geometry without changing its overall detail too much. And again, we can reorder this and do relax after or before, so we can go here and see right now the smooth, it's also relaxed, is before the shrink wrap. We can make it after the shrink wrap and change it so it's after the fact, so it does a little bit of smoothing after the fact, that may clean up the geometry a bit more before we get ready to do our shape. So there we are, we've got this nice relaxed ready to go face, and we're going to go in here and go and do some different effects that we can talk about. So let me just go here, and we're going to freeze all the stack, freeze, or you can do freeze modeling. We want to freeze everything, so now everything's gone from that. So let's go in and talk about the polygon reduction, and then eventually we'll go to the face maker. So there's a polygon reduction tool we saw before, and you can see right here, if you just do polymesh, poly reduction, by default it will turn everything into a tessellated mess, and that's not exactly what you want. It's very fast. So there's these two options. There's either reduce parallel edge loops, that will just try to reduce based on your edge loop structure, and reduce the whole loop at a time. But even better than that is this preserve quad lines, and if you turn this all the way up, as you reduce, it will try to preserve quads. This also tries to maintain symmetry as much as it can, so you've got the enforced symmetry that's trying to roughly enforce symmetry. So if you, doesn't always work perfectly, but if it's not turned on, it doesn't work as symmetrical depending on your geometry. So there's a few options here, but if you turn this way all the way up, but try to keep everything in quads wherever it can. And you can keep going up here to make more and more and less detail. And as you can see, it's a pretty fast, robust polygon reduction tool. There's different options as well in here. You've got sharpness and preserve volume. But again, we'll control how it reduces and how often, where it breaks. Feature preservation is whether you want to keep boundaries or not, so it allows you to reduce boundaries or hard edges or creases. And LOD controls allows you to do an automatic LOD setup, where you can turn this on and you can just say reduce by 50% each time, and then you can say, okay, here's my full LOD 0, LOD 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and you can just do that for LODs. So lots of fun stuff in there you can work with. I just turn the LEDs off. So but one thing you'll notice when you do polygon juice, your geometry starts to get a little ugly. Things get less even. And you'll see, especially if you work on something like a full character, because you'll see, I'll show it in a second, but you'll see there's lots of, so that's where some of the tools like the relax and the smooth really can help you. So you can just do here to form relax, and relax relaxes geometry just by moving things in the along the surface of the object. So you'll see here it's no relax, and as you relax, it really does, it maintains volume. And that's a very nice deformer when you're working with polygon reduction. When you do start to lose some of the consistency and get these kind of bumpy areas, the relax really helps smooth it out. You don't normally go all the way 20. If you use smooth, it's almost the same tool but slightly different way of applying it. Smooth will actually go in and it won't maintain volume, so everything will just start to turn into like, a blob. So relaxes, maintains the volume, smooth doesn't, just gets everything. Smooth doesn't look at the silhouette of the object. Okay, so we've looked at deformers and polygon reduction. Again, I really enjoy. I've used Polygon just as a tool within XSI, and in studios I've worked at, Polygon Reduction XSI was used sometimes to generate LODs with very little user input, so that people didn't have to go in and model the LODs, they just model the high res and generate the LODs with the XSI Polygon Reduction. So it's a very powerful poly reduction tool and very effective and works well. You can also paint areas to poly reduce. So let me just open up the full character again. This is a medium res character. If we apply the poly reduction here, basically, you know what, I want to reduce the body, but I really don't want to reduce the head. We can paint areas with weight maps. So you have to do this before you do the poly reduction. So you have to go in first of all, property weight map, and you decide, okay, where do you want to reduce the least or the most? I'm going to go all the way up to a weight map of 1, and then I'm going to paint away from the face. So I'm just going to go right mouse button and just unpaint the face area here, because I really want to affect the face. The rest of him I don't care, and we'll see how that works. And then we can smooth it out a bit, so we have some transition there. Okay, so he's got his weight map on. Hit W again, and then we'll do a poly reduction. So poly mesh, poly reduction. I have to pick the object first. Poly mesh, polygon reduction. And right now everything's reduced evenly. But we'll lock that. We can click on to connect to the weight map here. Connect the weight map. Find the weight map we just created. And now what happens is, in this case, it's inverted, so I have to uninvert it. Now you'll notice the face wasn't reduced, but the rest of the body was. Of course, if you're using things like parallel edge loops, you know, it has a slightly harder time, but still, you can see worked pretty well, because something's going to try and keep, or you know, the quad lines again. Yeah, quad lines, that will work better. You can see again it's maintained the face, but the rest of the body has been reduced down by 50%. Again, the kind of wiggly lines to form relax is a great way to really clean those up and keep your geometry looking like it was actually hand modeled down to that resolution, even though of course I did that by hand. And we can see this right now if we go to the visibility options stats, and then we turn both selection and scene stats on. You can see that 6,000 polygons. If we go back to the polygon reduction, you can see as we, you can go up higher resolution 13 and all the way down to lower resolution. I still got the smooth going in there, so it's actually smoothing after the fact, so it's doing the polygon reduction and smoothing as we go, because I left the smooth in there in the stack, so you can see there how we can build a quick LOD. So the next thing I want to talk about was face shapes using a shape manager, and then lastly we'll look at skeletons and some basic weighting. Just gonna we're going to go ahead and now use the shape manager to generate some face shapes. So I'm going to open up my scene, file, open. I'm going to open up my head medium. Okay, there we go. And we're going to go in here and we're just going to bring this into the shape manager. It's located under view, animation, shape manager. And this is a great tool for creating both shapes. I'm going to go shaded. Animating shapes and also setting up face shapes. You can use several other techniques, but this is a good tool to start with. So we're going to go here and we're going to start by going and click on base shape and going duplicate, and we're going to give us a name, so we hit F2, call this smile, and then we're going to just tweak the face to make it appear to be a smile. So we're going to start, let me just check something here, that's fine. We're going to start by using the move point tool, and we're going to turn proportional on to give us a bit more flexibility to work with this. Start with the mouth, and again if I had reference it would be a lot better, but we'll just use this here. hold R, left mouse, to make it bigger, and we're just trying to open the mouth up a bit. And you'll notice when I open it, both the top and bottom open up together. That's not exactly what I want. So I'm actually going to click on this proportional right mouse button and turn on an option called Consider Neighborhood. That's going to look at wherever there's a seam and only move things from one half of the seam. In this case, you'll see here, it's only going to move the bottom lips. That's really kind of what I want here in this case. And then we go to the side and move things up. You can also use functions like symmetry, and then of course when you move one half, it moves the other half as well. Again, be careful with tweaking stuff, because you can make ugliness quite easily, as you can see here. So I'm just going to pull out some of the areas there. And again, this is not, let me just make the brush a bit smaller so I'm not working in such a large area in this case. But, okay, so we've got a bit of smile. We'll do some areas on the cheek as well. So just want to check I didn't change that. Okay. So just again, just hold R down, the left mouse button, and we just move the cheeks up a bit. It's going to give it a bit more happy feel. And you know, there'll be other things. You crunch the nose up a bit as well. Yeah, lots of fun stuff there. And you can see here the shape, this one, and then the smile. And then if you click on animate, you'll see a slider here going to slide into the smile shape. It's not a great smile, but it's good enough. Okay, let's go back here, create, and we'll go and create another duplicate, and we'll call this one screen. F2. So here we make the big mouth open. So again, we've got proportional, consider neighborhood turned on. I'm just going to make that brush a bit bigger and turn symmetry off for a second. So what happened just there is when I hit R, I actually changed this to rotate. So be careful, this right mouse button allows you to change the different modes, so just be careful with that, otherwise it can give you some ugly results. And we're just going to pull down here and try to get this kind of terrified kind of scream look. You know, I want to get those eyes nice and big and wide and open. So again, R, left mouse, and just kind of really pull those open. So anyway, you should get the idea. And we'll do one more in a second, one more funny shape. So they've also got their scream, smile, scream, base. Okay, we'll just go back to base shape and we'll just do duplicate one more, and this one we'll just do a simple kind of frown. So okay, and we'll just again pull the lips down a little bit, make them a bit. Or is it this? Let me just check I didn't change the mode there. I did change the rotate. That's our right mouse button. So I've got my mouse on the right button for scaling. So just bring that down a bit more. Okay, just drop a little bit, and then we'll just do some work on the forehead as well, because frown normally brings the forehead down as well. We just go in here and just a bit larger brush area. So R, left mouse button, and just kind of bring that kind of down a bit, kind of. And maybe drop the cheeks a little bit as well. Okay, so there's our frown. So we've got the scream, smile, base, and frown. And again, if we go back to base shape or go animate, we can actually animate each of those and see how they work. and you can set keys on these with a little keyframe button. We're not going to worry about that now. So it's one way to build your shapes, and there are other ways in here. If you go under the animate menu set, you'll see under shape you can do shape manager we just used. There's also select key shape. That's very much like Maya's technique, where you could actually build the shapes and just pick in each of them. But if you do that, they will end up in the shape manager, so it's great because you don't have to worry about having these heads all over your scene. It keeps things a lot cleaner. As you saw, it also knows the deltas, so it knows where each one is. And you can make more of these libraries, so you can actually go here and create a group and have a group for like phonemes. You can get rid of a group, delete the group, and it goes back into its basic group. So you can have multiple groups and put different shapes in different groups. So you can have a group for expressions, a group for phonemes, and lots of different groups in there. And of course, if you want to animate it, it's just a matter of going to picking the object, going to the animate tab, let me refresh that, and just going in and setting keys on these. There's a key button here that keys all of them. So there we are. I'll just do a quick thing just to show you for fun. So he smiles, and he gets, he frowns because he's seen something maybe scary, and then screams, and then realize it wasn't scary after all. Okay. So there you go. That's one way of looking at all this stuff here. So that's a quick example, and you can see here on the timeline. There you go. Okay, last thing I want to show before we end this session is basic kind of character rigging. So I'm going to put up my border medium and enveloping, not rigging. So what we're going to do here is show basic character enveloping. They have some default skeletons inside of XSI that you can use, and they even have rigs, and there's also what's called a guide as well you can use to build your rig and set it up, as well, called the skeleton character biped guide. We're just going to use the basic primitive model skeleton man basic, and that's fine for just showing this basic enveloping, and then rigging will be shown in the next session. So it's a little bit small, so we need to scale it. And of course move it. And this one doesn't quite fit yet, but don't worry about that because we're going to make it fit by using a technique that's quite nice that exists in XSI that's known as bone length. So we can just now take some of these skeletons and rotate them. If you don't want to pick your geometry, you could use layers, or you could change this to a different mode like chain element. So there's chain element, will be bones or roots, and you can use that to edit. So I'm just going to take that one and rotate the root here a bit, because you can rotate the roots, that's fine. You can rotate the joints as well, of course. Ideally you'd rotate the roots to get things roughly, that's the IK, reframe that. There's two handles here, one's the root, one's the IK. So I can get the other one, that'd be good. That's not it either. See if that's it. No. Okay. This must be the root. Yeah, there we go. So I could have picked this in the, you know, it wasn't that bad where it was. So we'll just do the same here. We don't know if I got the root or not. Nope. It's the OK, so I'll just do here Control and select it. and that will toggle the selection. That would be easier than trying to keep clicking inside it. There we are. We need to bring things up a bit, so you can see the neck's too short. Spine's a bit short as well, so we'll just bring this, and we can pick the joint, hit enter, and change the joint length. So it's not actually going in the joint, it's just going in and moving the joint length. And that's really the best way of tweaking things if you need to. Again, you can hold shift down to make this more sensitive if you need to. It's really these two I need to tweak, so I just take this one here, joint length, get it into neck, and this one here to get that joint length into the head. And it's just a really nice thing. You can also change how you view the joints as well. Joints are created by default with IK. So there we are. So again, you need to rotate those arms a bit just to make sure they fit into the geometry correctly. So just go wireframe here for a second. It's wireframe shaded, not what I wanted. Wireframe, and we can see that right now the entire skeleton is actually a little bit too far back. So we're just going to pick the entire skeleton, and if you pick it with your right mouse button, it should pick the entire skeleton, but you may have to go in and pick. I'm going to pick it this time from the root here. I'll do middle mouse there, sorry, to get the root, and we're just going to move the whole thing forward a touch to get some of these joints in the geometry a little better, and then we just work with those arms to get them positioned in. Hopefully that's the right one. Yep. So we'll just get that positioned in there a bit. Again, I'm not worrying too much about this because we're just going to give you an example of envelope weighting. I'm not really going to get this fully rigged and set up. And if you are, you would of course take more time to make sure everything is in the correct location. Like right now, the clavicles are a bit too short, and that's a common mistake people make. And you want to make sure your clavicles are long enough so your arm can drop without going through your geo. So about there will be right. Okay, so we have our skeleton built. Next thing is to go in and envelope it. Now when you envelope it, you only want to envelope to the joints and the roots. So you want to make sure you only select those. You can actually envelope to anything. You can envelope to nulls, you can envelope to other characters, models, geometry, curves, you name it. So at least I think you can do the curves, but just to be aware, so what they have here is in the skeleton, the default skeleton, they have an enveloping group, and those are all the joints and some of the roots and some of the IKs, but really just in this case the joints and then some of the key areas that you probably want to envelope to. They even got an arm effector there. So most things you wanted to join to, and I think there may be one extra thing in there. This is just a group. So what you can do in this case, instead of picking each joint one at a time when you go to enveloping, you just pick the group. So we pick the geometry, go back to object, and envelope, set envelope, and then it says yes, put on the animation. Normally you want to do that because I'm in the modeling construction mode. It's asking, do you want to put this? And this is pick all the joints, so I can just go here and pick the enveloping group and then right mouse button, or I could pick each of the joints. You can decide the weight limit you want. So I'm just going to lock this out for a second, just show you what this means. Just go back to chain elements. So if I rotate this arm, you can see how it is, but we can see how it works on 2 joints, 3, 3 was a bit better, and you keep going, 4, 5. So you can see how many you want to envelope to. If you're not going to a game and you don't have to worry about speed as much, you can go up to 5 or 6 to get some nice deformations. Normally 3 is a good number for most areas, and you can get by with 2 in some areas. You can do distance based, that looks at the hierarchy, or you can do normal based, sorry, distance based. You can do normal based as well, but it works still differently, but doesn't work ideally unless you have to make sure all the joints are inside the geometry for normal based. So distance based works fine in most cases. We've got that's 3, and then you just have to do the tweaking of the enveloping to make things look nicer. So you just go in, you can several tools to do this. One tool is one of the standard techniques when you pick the object, and they have this thing here, the weight panel. Second one, weight panel. You can see all the different joints, and you can pick them and paint them. So you can say, oh, well, you know, here is a spine 2. You can pick that and then start painting. So we've got add turned on right now, and I can start adding in to that just with the weight painting, hitting W. W will show you the weight painting tool, and then you can start painting areas, tweak them. You can smooth out areas, the smooth tool, just as we were with painting weight maps. And this is pretty much a weight map here you're looking at, and we're just smoothing some of the weights out in that area and tweaking stuff and hoping we get the results we want. You know, we can see here there's a shoulder, left shoulder, and you can also use the pick button and just pick on the joint, and then it'll highlight that joint to show you which one it is, and then of course you can start painting if you need to. I'm on smooth right now, so add, and we can paint more of some of these joints in if you need to, and then we can smooth it out to see what results we could get. Another tool I use a lot is the reassignment tools and the smooth. So we say, look, this area is ugly, so I'm just going to tag some points here in the problem area, so mostly under this arm here, and then we just go local reassignment, and I'm just going to change this again, chain element, and then we can go in and pick for local joints I want to assign to. So maybe we want to do to the spine, shoulder, and arm, and then right mouse button, it will assign it between those 2 or 3 joints, whichever one you have selected. Now that didn't work great, as you can see, so we can now go in and try and apply a smooth to it and increase the smooth value to get different effects if you want. I think I only have 2 picked, not 3, but you can see kind of how this will work. So that's another way of working until you don't paint. And the third way is the weight editor, where you can actually look at all the different values and tweak them in here. So you say, oh, I want to weight more to spine 2. You know, you've got different sliders you can push stuff to as well, so you can drive more towards one aspect or another by picking one of these joints. So or you can of course just type numbers in per vertex, but there's lots of numbers to type in, so I picked a lot of vertices. So hopefully that'll give you an idea on the weight editor and how you can use that to kind of tweak your weights and work with your weights and affect them. Oh, and the other thing is, by default interactive refresh is not turned on, so you may want to turn it on to actually see when you're painting, you know, what's actually happening. So if I go back to the spine 2 here and start painting, it paints and then it moves. If you turn interactive refresh on, as you paint, it should be, actually it doesn't seem to do much difference. So oh, this one I've only got tag points, so it's only painting. So as you paint, you can see it moves as I paint. Pick a different joint so it's more clear. So as you paint, you should see it update. I'm on smooth now, I can see it. So you paint, you see it update. If interactive refresh is turned on, if you turn it off, as you paint, you see the painting, and then you let go and it goes back. So this will be fast if it's turned off, but it's also quite nice to see exactly what's happening. Okay, so there we are, and that's the end of session 3. So hopefully this gives you a good overview of some of the character modeling process, and a little bit about enveloping, but I consider a part of the character modeling process because sometimes you have to edit things. Now, one thing that is a little different about XSI, especially with the character modeling that I didn't mention before, just realised, should probably cover that, is if you actually do decide to remodel your character, XSI can handle that very well. So, for instance, one thing is, right now we're just like tweaking our enveloping, but say you decide, oh, I want to add some more detail to the torso, so we can add some more resolution to the torso here, and then we can see that it's still going to deform fine. So if I pick the joints, and we can see it still deforms the way I kind of expected it to. I haven't done the weighting perfectly here. But then say, well, that's good, but say you want to delete geometry. Now this is normally a big no-no in most packages, because adding geometry is fine, but deleting, well, that changes the order and that can cause big problems. So let me just pick an edge loop and delete it, and you can see right now, even when you delete the edge loop, it does still work, and you can see if I pick that chain element again and rotate, everything still works. So what's happened is, when you did that, it actually added history nodes in there that you can see. If I pick the geometry again, it added a bunch of history nodes in here. So you can see on the body, on the polymesh, you've got envelope operator, but on here you've got reserve components and split edge components and all this other stuff going on. Well, I don't want all that history in there, so I'll just hit freeze M, and because the stacks are separated, freeze M means you can freeze the modeling stack, keep all the deformation we had, keep everything we wanted, but then you can see here that everything is still working. And this is a great feature because we've changed the topology, but we actually haven't do any more envelope weighting, because it just interpolates as you add or remove geometry. But it's really nice to see that happen, and it can save you a tremendous amount of time, because you can work with your base character, and you can rebuild parts of it as you want to, and you don't have to worry about re-enveloping the entire character. You may have to tweak some values here and there, but pretty much you envelope once, make changes, you can keep going. And then maybe even worthwhile enveloping your low-res character, and then as you add more detail on it, the more detail will just be interpolated as you build more into your character. So have fun, and I'll go ahead and do the next session.